Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. All right, here we are. Let's start sketching. One of the things I do when I first start to sketch is I just start with simple shapes. To me, it's like one of the easier approaches, and I just start to block out like little head ball circles, and then think of like a base shape. Maybe it's like a distorted triangle, like you see over here on the left. I just had this rough little sketch here, and just allows me to think about things a little bit differently, I guess, when I'm working. So, anyway, good morning, everybody. Here we are back again. I was trying to get more of these videos out. I have like 3 more in production. I just got tied up this week with a bunch of some freelance work, and then I have to write a bunch of grants for school. So I'm sort of tied up for like the next week and a half. But then I'll be back, and I have a whole bunch of new videos that I'll be prepping up on here. And I actually was asked by a couple people to put together some videos on. Someone asked me to put a video on myself and who I am, my background, and I haven't done that yet. I will do that. And then I was also asked to talk a little bit about confidence and motivation, especially in the artistic process, and what gets me up in the morning, gets me want to drawing and producing work. And so I'm going to do that as well. I'll talk about a couple things because there's some traits that a lot of us share as artists that I think we need to focus on and talk about. So anyway, we just keep sketching here, just having some fun. I did speed this up about 40%, trying to keep it in to a decent timeline, which isn't bad. Or actually, excuse me, it's only 25% sped up, so that's not bad at all. So starting here with a core shape, trying to bring it out. Now I'm noticing already when I'm sketching and drawing that I'm getting a lot more comfortable with my drawings. And this usually happens any type of project I work on, whether it be environment design, prop design, characters, even I've done marketing pitches for companies. Anything that I get involved with, usually my first 3 to 5 days of sketches and drawings are my worst because it's my mind sort of settling in to a overall workflow and figuring out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And that's pretty much the process that's happening right here, you know. So I start to get a little bit more comfortable with the drawings and thinking up possible solutions that get me to different outcomes. And again, these are going on our water buffalo series, you know. So what I wanted to do was try to pick an animal to work on every couple weeks and then just keep developing from there. So April, March, and then going into April is always a super busy week for me. So hopefully things will loosen up pretty short. But once we get towards the end of April, I'll have a little bit more time to finish some of the videos. And some of the videos are hard. It's not only just doing the recording, but a lot of times if there's music in the background, YouTube won't allow that in. So I have to go back and I have to voice over, and then I have to edit them, cut stuff down. Sometimes if I'm in class, I'll have a student come in who sneezes, or, you know, I've had people interrupt my class before from other classes, and so I have to go back and, you know, sort of adjust everything. Anyway, I'm sort of liking this guy right here. I was thinking this morning when I started drawing that I wanted to have like a normal character. I might have a goofy, like lazy character, and then I might go for like an evil, bad character. And part of the thinking behind that was just sort of exploring some more shapes and seeing what I come up with. So I'm sort of liking this guy. I was trying to distort the nose a little bit, have a little bit more fun with part of the eye shapes in here. See what I come up with. Alright, just trying to get a little bit more contrast in here. Trying to get, you know, I like wrapping the horns. I think they're important to wrap with some lines to get them to pop out a little bit. And then, you know, and by hitting stuff with lines like that, it does give me a little bit more contrast inside the image. I'm always thinking about contrast when I'm sketching. you know, light and dark, pushing shapes out, getting one area to pop over another, leading you through part of an image, bringing you back to another part of the image. To me, that's a huge part of that battle with contrast in what you're doing. Anyway, I'm going to move forward here in just a second. So I'm going back to that key shape that I had already over here on the left. I'm sort of copying and pasting that. And I just switched it over, transformed it to look at it from another angle here. I'm going to sketch another character in. So I do this in my sketchbook quite a bit. I'll have to do that. I'll have to do a demo and take some images from my sketchbook. I'm in my sketchbook quite a bit, and especially, you know, if I have like 20 minutes where I'm waiting, you know, to pick up, let's say, prescription or something, or maybe have, you know, one of my classes finished early, I have another 30 minutes while I'm eating my lunch, I open up the sketchbook. So one of the things I do in my sketchbook is, you see over here on the left, I take a base shape and then I try to replicate that shape and draw it on top of it and come up with different versions to see where that takes me in terms of part of my overall character sketching. See where I end up, right? I think that's really important for me. I've noticed, you know, from being an artist for years and working with students as a instructor, that a lot of students don't want to start with a step. They just want to dive into the piece, and I'm totally against that. What you really need to do is, artists really need building blocks, especially at a younger development phase. You need something to jump off of and to step forward from. And this is one of the best things that you can do, is you can get into your piece like this and start, you know, with one basic shape, and use that shape to move you through the rest of all your sketches and your drawings and see how you end up. I think that's really, really pivotal, super important. I like the feel of this guy's nose and the way it sort of angles down like that. So it's a cool looking nose, and maybe just has a couple teeth that pop out, and his lower jaw basically fades into a furry base that connects to his body. That's what sort of thinking. And then again, he feels like he's, I don't know, he's just sort of a happy-go-lucky guy, and just sort of, I'm just a water buffalo. I'm just sit out here and I'm just gonna, you know, drink from the water today and eat some grass. Nothing too fancy, right? Just have fun with him. Cool. And I think going into this, you know, I'm getting a better idea of how I want to push and squash shapes a little bit more as I'm sketching some of these characters, seeing where they take me. I was thinking right there, maybe if I made the horns thicker, would that feel different on the character? Remember, if you guys have seen some of my process videos before that I've done for students, one of the things that I talk about that's really important is, after this, is going back over your designs and pushing the shapes again, and going through them. You know, your part of your whole process as a designer is that process of elimination and going through and, you know, adding percentages. You know, what does that mean? You know, it's pushing and squashing a shape a little bit more, maybe adding some hair on a character, maybe some freckles. You know, let me start over here. And the more you keep pushing your designs, the better you get, because you continuously are going into your designs and you're adding, you know, you might make the eyes 2% better. You change the thickness of the horns, that makes it 1% better. And then you add on an underbite, maybe that's a 2% improvement. But then at the end of that sketch, you've just added 8 things worth 2%. That's 16% that you've sort of increased your drawing. So that's how I tend to think about things. And I learned that from working in the industry, from being around different designers and art directors who would make you go back and rework your stuff, you know, and you'd rework it and make it a little bit better, and you'd add things here or there. And within reason, there's some art directors and some people that go a little crazy and they make you overwork everything, and then you sort of kill the drawing and it doesn't become fun anymore because it loses all its energy. But with that aside, if you just go into the drawing and you're thinking of ways to improve it, you know, maybe it's the forearm of the character, the head ball shape, you know, like here I'm going for a larger eye because the smaller eye made the character feel a little bit more lonely and a little bit more I'm gonna say silly or not dumb, but I hate using that word dumb, but just a little bit more homey. So with a large eye and these like large sagging, things underneath the eye, it's gonna give my character a little bit more umph, a little bit more pizzazz. So I'm starting to think I want this guy to look sort of evil. I like that underjaw, the way he could talk, and having this little goatee that comes off the top. So definitely liking the progression of how this guy's going forward. Nothing. I can't think of anything better than being up at 4 a.m. in the morning with a cup of coffee and just sitting some good fresh Starbucks. Go down to the local Costco, bag of beans for $20. Delicious, right? Okay. I like these horns, but I'm thinking maybe they should be a little longer. I don't know. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's try to get the face in here a little bit more. I need to refresh a little bit. Luckily, one of my good friends, Joe Weatherly, teaches for us, and he's a fantastic artist and teaches animal anatomy classes, and really, really amazing painter as well. And just had an awesome show in Paris, which is really cool. So, yeah, there's that seventh vertical vertebrae I was sort of talking about before. I like having that in the back there. It adds a little bit, so it's like this hump, and then the face sort of comes down at an angle and angles off a little bit. I am curious though, what if he had these? I might leave them, but what if he had like really huge, the horns were really large and sort of protruded out a little bit more. I can come back to that though when I do variations off this character, but that's something that I could push into him. Maybe I could curve him a little bit. I like the thought if they're so big, like if he's talking to another character and his head turns, like maybe he's talking about, back in my day, we didn't have any droughts with water because there was ample water, and he's like turning his head to one side and his horns are so big they're like carving into the ground every time he talks, right? He's sort of this evil looking character. Keeps his head down, sort of sly. I don't know, that's pretty cool. I like the way he's coming out. I like those little curves on there a little bit more. I think that's fun. Okay. Cool. So far it's good morning, right? Sometimes when I draw and sketch, I have bad days like anybody else. I get really frustrated with part of my design process. Sometimes there's other stress or other things that I'm thinking about that are on my mind, that are sort of affecting the way my outcome of my sketches end up. Yeah, I'm liking this guy quite a bit. He has a nice, fun, sort of evil look to him. Cool. All right, one sec. Start over here. Again, every time I start, always going to see a head ball shape. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, but I'm thinking about it, the line down the center of the head ball. Because I just sketch in something and then I think how things are adjoined to part of that line. Again, here's my shape. You see it? Starting with a base shape and then from there. So one of the things I'll have to show you in my sketchbook, I'll do a before and after, or set up I have a video recorder above my desk, but it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to record off of because it has a tendency to put too much padding in the files. So when I bring them into Camtasia like this, they're really, really heavy and they take forever to edit and go through and change. So sort of a pain to draw off the desk. That's why I sort of like working on Sketchbook Pro like this. Is the pencil in Sketchbook Pro is just beautiful. It works so fantastically. I use Photoshop too all the time, but some of the things in Photoshop that I've seen don't look nearly as the brushes are okay, but it's just a sensitivity with Sketchbook Pro. It's absolutely amazing. God, this guy has a real fluffy ear. All right, like that. See if that head pops up. part of that secret to water buffaloes is that you'll notice I didn't put ears in these guys. I'll come back later and throw them in. Sometimes I skip the ear out a little bit because I want to get the pose. Ear to me is just a secondary element. But in this case, I'm thinking, what if this guy had like super, super large ears? Maybe just these little short, squatty, fat horns that came out. I like that eye, that sort of low eye. Eyes are hard for me sometimes. I need to go back and just do a couple eye pages, think about different types of eyes, how the eyelids work. Grumpy, old water buffalo. Rawr, nobody tells me what to do. I know my voiceover sucks, but you know, when I'm sketching, it's something that I can do that helps me try to find part of the personality of the character, you know? I mean, to me that's huge right there, you know, is if I can get a little bit of that personality of the character in, and if I can think of his voice or think of the way he might walk or some other attribute that adds to who he is as a person and what he does, that's just going to guarantee me a little bit more success in the drawing. Absolutely, it's totally worth it, right? I mean, could you imagine not doing that? You know, you have to feel and have a good understanding of who your character is and what they're going to do, how they're going to interact with their environment, how they move their head, and you know I always think of this too, like primary animation versus secondary. So, you know, in this character, his primary animation is his jaw. I'm thinking the way his jaw would animate, the way he would talk. He would have like one of those English jaws, and his jaw would sort of pop forward, and he'd be sort of grumpy. But maybe his whole head stays very still, and then maybe his ears move when his jaw talks. You know, so versus the other character here in the middle. His whole head moves when he talks. He animates with the center of his head, you know, sort of moving around and looking at different angles that gives him this sort of sly feel. But this guy here that I'm working on now, he's so big and heavy, right? He just has this, just imagine his whole center mass from his eye to his nose down to the bottom part of his lip to stay still, and his jaw just moves. You almost like, imagine him when he talks, he looks like he's chewing, you know, like at the same time, you know. It's like if you ever had a conversation with somebody who, you know, they're eating something, they're talking with food in their mouth, right? And they're sitting there talking to you like, oh yeah, that's right. So I'm imagining this guy like that, but just older and grumpier. You know, he's sort of wise and just sort of like, well, what are you going to do about it? And he's just chomping on his food, right? Huge lower jaw just moving around. I'm sort of liking this guy too. Hey, it's a good morning, right? Awesome. All right. All right. Let's put a little bit of details in here. All right, I wanted to show you what I meant by the voice, so I went and I grabbed a handful of trail mix. So imagine this guy, his voice like this. Well, I could tell you something, but hold on a minute. I've been here in these plains for the past 30 years, and nobody's going to tell me what I should be doing or where I should be going. This is my grass. This is where I live. All right, sorry to have to do that, but now you understand the point that I was going for, right? So imagine this guy like that. That lower jaw is huge, part of his character. For me, that's part of his primary animation, if I were to say that. That's his primary thing, is that jaw moving around and swinging, and him just chewing on, like, you know, grass and weeds and all kinds of, you know, whatever this guy eats, right? But he always has like that, like, you know, 5 inches of something in his mouth, and he's just chewing on it and while he's talking the whole time, you know. So You know, that's versus this guy, to me, over on the far right, he might be really nasally, you know, with that large nose like that. You know, he might have that sort of, hey, guys, this is what I think. Anyway, let me start placing these together on a sheet, start seeing what I have. Maybe fill up a couple more spots. Okay. Oops. There we go. Get him in over there. That's cool. I mean, already I have 4 sketches that I really like that I could add to. I think are working nicely. Might add a little bit. I like putting that little bump in the back there because it locates where their head is in relationship to their body and sort of gives me a feel of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Cool. Yeah, if you haven't been using this software, Sketchbook Pro, I really like it. It's so much fun. It's becoming a lot easier to use. They have cool brushes, other cool drawing elements on it. Just really aids a lot into your overall sketching and approach. Let's see if I can squeeze another guy in here real quick. I sort of like having to squeeze a character in because then it forces me to think about a different type of shape, So I have this limited space in my drawing, so maybe I have something that's a little bit more pointy. Okay. Coming off that head ball. So what I'm doing, I'm sketching like that. It's me thinking of the horn connecting to part of that head ball, and where's that horn going to be then on the other side? And then how am I going to bring the nose back? And how's that going to connect? Maybe this guy has just a smaller, little pointy ear, maybe. Look at that straight forehead. Man, you could land an airplane on there, right? Totally straight. Maybe this guy's like overly smart. Alright. Sometimes I do struggle on eyes. I try to get the right eye in and then I feel like it's not working, so I have to go back and erase it a little bit. And sometimes I oversketch the eye and put too much detail in, but that's alright, it's part of the process. Thinking about where I'm going to end up and how I got there, right? Just thinking around against a curve, maybe. That's why I was sketching that in like that. Straight lines. Trying to figure out, thinking about how we connect from up this upper part of the nose down to the base of the chest, right? What kind of line is going to angle in there, and how's that going to make the character read? So now I'm getting frustrated. It's all right. I'm trying to find that solution, that linear indication. Nope, don't like that. So, I do sort of like that angle in there like that, where there'd be like both sides of the flaps of the cheeks sort of come out a little. And that was sort of my finished outcome. Sorry, I got frustrated and I had to stop the recorder for a minute. That's okay. That's going to happen, right? So I like that straight against the curve. I have that straight line coming down from the nose. And then he's got this really large, like, fatty lower area just that blends into like a ton of hair that overhangs. So he looks like he could be the cousin to the last guy I drew, right? Like they're from the same family of grumpiness, you know. Move them up here a little bit more, so maybe I can sketch a little bit more. Now, what can be really cool is I like that straight line, but then I need to bring this line down here much lower and have it connect to a lower part, because they have that, water buffaloes have like that weight, that lower mass that's down underneath their chin. And call it like think of it like a goiter, this large area underneath that connects downward, right? Got like those sort of teeth, old, rotting like teeth that are sort of coming up a little bit. This guy's talking a little. It would be really fun is to sculpt these guys out of clay. I'd love to do that. That's something else that I do. I need to do some videos on that. I like sculpting in clay. I've taken a couple classes in it, learned from a couple guys, and really picked up some good tricks. A lot of it's just it takes a little bit more time. It'd be fun to do like a sculpture of these guys and like having like a time relapsed recording. That way you can see the sculpture sort of develop. I also need to do a video for you guys. I made these. Did a kit bash of 3 robots. They came out really cool. I want to show you guys how I made it, how it came about. That kit bashing is something really, really fantastic. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let me focus in on this guy. It's got to have. Sometimes I like that feel on certain characters where it looks like there's hair coming off the lip, but it also looks like maybe there's food. Like they eat so sloppily and there's just a ton of food that sort of comes off the top, you know, sort of left there. So he's pretty cool. I like this guy a lot too. Oops. I'm going to move him over here a little bit. See if I can fit him in, get a little bit more space between them. So this is the one thing about being digital versus being on a normal piece of paper is you tend to be a little bit more careful with some of your character sketches because they're on layers. So you have the ability to move them and scale them down, and you know, you get to be a little bit more spoiled. I sort of miss having the ability to just do rough sketch. A good friend of mine, John Navarez, if you look him up, his stuff's amazing. Really talented guy, and he just draws with a black Prismacolor pencil on animation paper. And man, he just cranks stuff out, just gets into it, and just doesn't you know, he just overlaps stuff and just, you know, really super nice guy and very talented. So look, there's my head ball shape with a base face shape. Okay, I'm just gonna take that and see what I can turn it into. So again, you saw me before I had some linear lines in there. I'm gonna try to go in just a different direction and see how I end up and how it develops. So when I sketch, I like to do that, just like free sketch, you know. That's a great thing about going out with your sketchbook to like a coffee house, is you sit there and you look at people and you I always look for different body styles. Look for someone who's heavy, someone who's small, you know, and just finding those little variants in there. I already like the roundness in this character as I'm developing them. Round, fun shapes. So friendly, goofy, rounded ears, rounded heads, swirly horns, lower jaw that's very rounded as well. I think that adds a lot more to part of the design. So rounded nose, right? So in here, you know, before a couple of those other characters, I was thinking straight line versus curved line versus opposites. Now this is friendly guy here, right? Maybe he's a little younger. He's a little bit more naive. Maybe his horns haven't been gone through as much battle, so they're like very pristine, and he's just, you know, Never says anything bad about anybody. Lives in a good neighborhood by the watering hole type of thing, and he's just very nice. And would you like some water? Come by, and it's cool. I like that. Liking him. Very furry from the lower part, right? He's got his little eye there. Got like curvy little horns. All right. Cool. He's fun. Again, start with a base shape. Keep it simple. And then use that base shape to keep you tied into a certain amount of detail. Alright, now that I feel like I have that base shape in there, now it's time to come in and put some interior line details that are going to add a little bit more to the character. Alright, I'm finished wrapping up the horns here a little bit. Got those little fluffy ears that overlap the horns that come forward, right? Gotta have those, to me, those ears have to be round and fluffy, just like his face, because he's a friendly guy. And then try to avoid any, that nostril bugs me a little bit, how I made it a little bit pointy, but I could adjust that a little bit later. And keep a round nose. There's that sort of hump in the back. The way his head sort of drops a little bit. And that, to me, is something pivotal. Once I'm going to get to doing the bodies in just a little while. Once I start sketching the bodies, because I was already thinking about this in my design process here, is that the head in relationship to that bump on the neck is key. If a character is sort of mean or overly proud, I want his head to try to raise a little bit above that. And if he's a little bit more subtle or a little bit more friendly, I want his head to drop down a little bit more from that sort of bump in the back, that vertebrae, from that shoulder. I want him to feel like, the head's down and he's just friendly and nice and likes to get along with everybody, right? So what I'm getting at here is the position of that head in relationship to the body is going to be pivotal in getting the rest of the character developed. Okay? So I feel like I got like the way the details coming up here. I don't like to over detail, just put a couple sketches to turn the form and the shape, That's cool. He's friendly. Sort of feels like I could put him in could have a whole children's book. A couple of these characters from today, right? The nice guy, the grumpy guy. Now I go back and I haven't looked at the other guy that I did before this guy, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, he sort of feels like a pig. He's like a pig water buffalo. You know what I mean? So, there, scale him down just a little bit. Okay. See if I can get that other horn in there, maybe. Just do a little bit of overlap there. Maybe I can sketch in the other side. Oh, we ran out of room. I'm going to have to just break off the tip, maybe. Wrap with a couple more lines or something here. And pretty cool. Maybe got tangled up into something. He has some vines or something hanging off the end. Alright. Cool. I like him. Different feel. Different character, right? He's fun. Alright, let me take a look at all of them here. I think I might be able to squeeze in one more guy up here in the corner. Fill that page, right? Some fun designs. I really like this. Now I look back at this guy. Boy, he sure looks evil with those angled eyes and those horns going downward. I still think he'd be cool if his horns were even larger. Alright, so then look, there's my shape. Boom, head ball, simple shape. See that? Just a couple lines, now add to it. That's what you got to do. So I'll show you later in my sketchbook, but what I'm doing in my sketchbook is I just draw the base shape and I fill the whole page. I put lines across, and I put like 3 in a row and then another 3 and another 3. And then I come back in and pencil in the information. So I have a guideline. I have a template right now to work off of right here. You know, I like that a lot. It guides me in the way that I'm thinking. This guy should be energetic. He should look like he's on, like, drank 5-hour energy and he's totally wired. He's like, rah! Hey everybody, what's going on? Where's the party? Where's the party? Let's see if I can get that in here a little bit more. I think he needs to have that jaw, moving jaw. Like his head literally stays still. He's got a straight line, and then so he's got straight lines up above and tons of curves down below. And he's just like he's amped on coffee constantly. He's got a little short ear in here maybe. I just like, oh, you know what? Gosh, you want to see a great movie with great characters in it? It came out. I do have it on DVD, but it's called 29th Street. If you look around, you can find it. This guy reminds me. I'm thinking of that character from 29th Street. They talk about all these different characters in New York, right? And there's this one character who would spit a lot when he would talk. He'd be like, "Hello," and he had a little bit of that like I could say a little bit of a lisp, and he was like, "Hello," and when he would talk, he would like little bits of spit would come off. So maybe this guy's so like, you know, energetic and hyper when he's talking. He's like, "Hey everybody," and he's talking, and there's like spit coming off his mouth, and he's just like constantly, you know, just super wild, and has a ton of energy all in there. He comes running up, and he's like the gossiper of the group type of thing, right? Wow, that's cool. I'm liking this guy. So anyway, as I'm gonna wrap this guy up here, let me finish him up, put some teeth in here. Okay, so I'm really starting to notice that, I don't know if you noticed it, but between the last page I did and between this page, my drawings are getting a lot more loose, a lot more confident, and I'm finding a rhythm. That's great. That's what I want. I want to find that rhythm. I want to get myself into a certain area of knowing exactly where my designs are taking me, and I'm getting that. I'm not going to say necessarily, well, I'm going to say confidence. It's like confidence, rhythm, and inner peace. It's like all those things coming together where you start to find this overall direction that your art and your drawings are taking you into. And the only way to get that is to really be in just a sort of a soothing environment where you're relaxed and you're listening to music and you're just sketching and you're having fun. That's it. There's no other negatives coming out of there, right? It's just all positives. I talk about that quite a bit to some of my students. You have to, if you are around negative people, if you're in a negative work environment, you might have a family member, mom or dad, that are really old school and they're very negative about art and drawing. Then there's nothing wrong with that. That's going to happen, but you have to learn how to block out those negative facts that come into your life, because those will bring you down, especially in your drawing process. And I should put some little drops of spit in here. And you have to block out those negative factors and think about the positive ones of what you could be and how good your drawings and your art could be if you work on a positive aspect. I mean, so many of the artists I know, that artists fight this ability. We tend to be negative. We tend to judge ourselves. We tend to compare ourselves to other artists. And you can't do that. You can't compare. Anyway, this is looking cool. I like this guy too. Right? Excellent. Totally wired. You know what? Can you imagine? I could do a couple sketches of this guy in some other poses, like more emotional based poses with personality, and I could just picture him talking and like spit. He has this, I got to make that tongue like flying around, and he's talking and spit's going everywhere. He's all over the place. Anyway, almost done here, guys. I think I'm just going to wrap it up in a minute. I'm going to finish this guy up, and you know, cool. Thanks you guys for watching and for participating. And I'll try to get some more of these out in the next couple weeks. Okay. Even though I'm super busy, I'll tighten them up. Thanks, guys. Take care. Talk to you soon.